much for coming. First, I'm Sing, and for those of you who don't know me so well, I am a neuroscientist in Amsterdam, and I work on the visual cortex, and I study the visual system. So this is my day job. And then the rest of the time, I do all kinds of crazy art-related things. And I hadn't done anything for a couple years until this summer when I was strongly inspired. So first, I'm going to introduce the team. My co-producer, Hao. Without whom this wouldn't have been possible. My amazing sound engineer, Tim. My great director of photography and studio owner, and there are a couple of people who can't make it tonight, but anyway, we are going to be on the panel later, and after we screen our film, you'll get to ask us everything. Yeah, maybe this slide.
Yeah.
Is that you?
I want to put the slide up, to kind of show you who I used to be and who I am now, and emotionally manipulate you into liking, the film, because I'm actually quite nervous about how it's going to be received. It's very provocative. I actually contacted a bunch of organizations, and they said that they couldn't promote it because it was too provocative. And in a way, I understand that, but it was a little bit tough to hear this, especially after I worked on it so hard. So that's why I put up this friendly picture to kind of deflect any criticism. And I want to give you an overview of the program so you know what to expect. We're going to start with a very fun welcome quiz. So I hope you all brought your mobile telephones because you'll be able to take part. And then we're going to show the actual ad that inspired this whole evening, show reactions from the public, and then talk about gender stereotypes in the media and how it affects society. And then I'll very briefly go over some legal issues because I'm not an expert in that. And then we'll have the actual screening, and then the making of discussion with the team members, and then talk and discuss a little bit about actions and how to move forward. So, okay, phones out.
Yeah.
Please go to stoppublicsexism.com/quiz.html. I'm going to present a couple of ads where you get to rate them. And the first question is going to be to rate how offensive the ad is, from not at all to highly offensive. And the next question is going to be describe what you think of the ad in just a few words. So here's the first ad. Okay, I am just going to pull out the results here. There's a range from moderately offensive, mildly, moderately, not offensive, not offensive, not offensive. Yeah, okay, so some people say, I don't understand the point of this ad. How do you describe it? Pop culture reference, sexist, aggressive, unnecessary nudity, doesn't really fit, send a message, demeaning, repetitive, sexist, unnecessary cleavage, maybe, generic, pure, bad typography, boring, not creative, no love, sexist, stupid, sensual, hot, poor wordplay, disgusting. Okay, so let's move on to the next ad. So if you got to that type font page, you can just refresh and then it'll reload the font there.
May I ask what the ad is for?
This one?
Radio station, I assume?
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
by radio or
Radio 5
Oh,
3.
Five
Dutch
Yeah.
staple, yeah.
Okay, here we go. So, it looks like we got at least one highly offensive, moderately offensive, mildly offensive, okay, heteronorm, abusive representation of rape culture. Sexualized radio, what the fuck? Sexist, strong, poor taste, silly, creepy, targeted at a young audience. Yeah, would anyone like to comment on it?
Can I see a full picture maybe, because I don't think I can actually make out what the ad is at all.
You want to see more?
It says summer 538.
Yeah.
So,
It's
but
a
in the
radio
Dutch,
station.
it's a radio station.
Yeah.
I really just realised that he's holding.
Yeah.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
is.
then that takes it to
Another
Yeah,
level. Yeah, I think so too. I don't like the fact that she's biting into it. Actually, and it also looks like it's really cheap. Well, this like kind of plastic thing, and you can see that it has dimples in it. It's just, it looks very cheap.
I think it's probably Photoshop.
Yeah, it looks like that might, yeah, it could be Photoshop.
Isn't it meant to be a swimming pool toy?
Yeah, exactly. It's not the idea of the summertime
Yeah,
and they're
exactly.
gonna swim on the radio in a swimming pool after they do the film.
Speaking of summertime, let's go on to the next ad.
Very interesting.
Is it the same?
It's the same. It's Radio 538. Okay, here we go.
Oh,
Then 1 second.
That's fine.
Okay, I'm seeing a bunch of moderately to highly offensive. Moderately, highly. Okay, none of these says that it's not offensive or mildly offensive. Gratuitous sexual imagery. Attention grabbing, that's true. Normalizes the word pussy, which is a sexist term. Terrible. Not cool pussycat, oh, it's too hot. Taking the piss. Come on. I do not get the link to the radio. We don't get that so often.
Sorry, no.
Blatantly sexually suggestive. Porn culture degrading, annoying. Animal and women abuse together. We step a lot under the name of humor. Okay, so interesting piece of information is I actually got this image and the first run from Deborah after telling her that I was working on this little film. And she sent me these images because she had seen them on the street and kind of noticed them and taken pictures of them. I was like, oh my god, I thought only I did that. And then when I saw this image, I actually didn't crop it because I like the fact that you see where it's displayed. It's on a public street. It's random people walking around. That's different than when you see something online and it's just another ad displayed on the street. So, does anyone want to share their views on
This
this?
is in Almere Centrum, it's just a shopping area.
Yeah.
And the Hudson one is not actually, which is less small street.
I think I see the link with the radio. I think it's in the middle left of the picture.
Where?
Oh yeah, it's a regular
Yeah.
bed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Behind the fountain.
Oh.
It's actually
Very old one.
Oh.
I think what a lot of these efforts do is they're not ready for us, and they are for some of us, but they're not ready for women.
Yeah.
They're really
Yeah.
aimed at a male kind of view,
Yeah,
what we might be about.
they're aimed to grab men's attention.
well, at least men who like women.
Men that listen to
And radios that hang out in public spaces.
So I just want to say that, this evening it's about being very open and honest and also sensitive and respectful to each other. So if anyone has differing opinions from like most of the other people in the room, you are also totally welcome to them. So I want to say something here, which is very strange, that when I saw this ad that Deborah sent me, I did not find it offensive. And I was trying to understand why, because I can totally see why it would be offensive to many people. But when I looked at this woman, I just felt like she could be me sitting on my couch with my legs spread open. And, I just always hated the way people ask women to keep their legs together all the time. And I just feel like I didn't feel as though she was being that disempowered in this picture. In fact, I take this as a posture of empowerment to be able to just sit like that. And for me, that overrode the other sexist considerations. So, and I also kind of like the pussy thing. I think it's kind of funny. So I was just like, it's funny, but I think I should be pissed off at this ad, and I'm not.
I think it's okay, like it's for you, just feeling comfortable at your home, but she's obviously not doing it for herself. And also her face and posture overly sexualized for somebody, for consumers. So I think this part is offensive. She's like crack open for somebody's.
Yeah.
And the cat also hiding our idea, is she serving an underwear over there or not?
Yeah.
So
It makes-
it's all work with your imagination.
If she was wearing sweatpants or something and not with the arms and face like that, then
Just speak freely if you want.
I would probably see the picture very much the same as you described it, Sim. If it were just a picture, but what makes it quite offensive to me is that they took a picture that could be playful and empowering, and they use it for like the most stupid product imaginable. So I find it mostly offensively stupid. So
Yeah,
even if there's
I
any
agree.
artistic quality to the picture,
Yeah.
then it is taken out of context for commercial purposes, and that I find offensive.
Yes,
This is
yeah,
something
I
that-
completely agree with what you
Yeah.
said.
This is a theme that we'll come back to over and over again. That sometimes it's the famous photographer or some other thing that makes it pass off as somehow more artistic and acceptable. And then that plays into the question of, when something is funny, who gets to decide what is funny?
If I may contradict
Yeah.
to that point, I wouldn't find it I don't have the same opinion, because I think if for example, it was a picture or like an ad for cat shelter or something, I'd still find it similarly offensive, even if it was for cat shelter, which is a good cause.
If she was like volunteer in this shelter, so it was her idea, or if it would be selfie, for example, I would be totally okay with that.
Yeah.
There's an open mouth.
who of the women here, who sits like this at home? I mean, I don't.
Yeah.
And it's not because I don't feel I'm allowed to sit with my legs spread out, but I don't have the urge to impose myself on people and put myself out there. I don't need that recognition. So there's definitely an exchange going on, which for me feels very imposing.
Well, I mean, it's clearly designed to attract the male gaze, and I'm not gonna lie, like it would catch my attention. Like this ad would catch my attention, but like, I think, I mean, it's totally except for the radio on the table, like it's not really related to like the product. It's just like they're using this sexualized image to grab
Yeah.
mainly men's attention, I think. So
And
like,
women.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
And that's basically the only purpose for them. I mean, we're talking already 10 minutes about them. I mean, that's what they want.
Yeah.
that's true.
So
That's
it's
That's
true.
what they want.
You know,
So I'd like
it has an
to
impact.
actually
You know?
move on to the next one.
Yeah.
What is this ad for?
Ah.
Food supply.
Food supply, yeah.
Oh, okay.
The man that
Yeah,
or
okay,
wearing
yeah, I get
suits
it,
was,
I get it, okay, yeah.
you have to look really well with.
No, it's like suit, like a, like a suit that you wear, like professors wear.
Do you, Cass, is your suit from Suit Supply?
Might be.
Dehumanization, irritating, childish, pretty funny and arty, spongy, not honoring of women and her breasts, fashionability as an excuse for sexism, just dumb. Terribly sexist, why a white man sliding down? This ad, I think it's interesting. How do you think you could explain a little bit about the background of this?
Yes, it was like actually a picture made by
Carly Hammers is it?
exactly Carly Hermes, one of the most like notable like Dutch fashion photographers, like internationally also known, really like a world renowned Dutch photographer. But he was already from the beginning of the foundation of like Suit Supply already there, and it was always the strategy to the fashionability to make it with high-end class models who always do the same old trick, but then well. It's like a validation for, well, look at us and just tongue cheek and still classy and high end, and it makes it less worse.
Yeah, every time I walk past a Suit Supply store, I want to throw a brick through the window. To me, the sexism doesn't matter as much. It's more what I perceive as racism and modern day colonialism in this ad that really bothers me. You know, like even the style of her hair, it's very minimalist. Looks almost shaved to me, and these idiots, you know, sliding off and like sitting, yeah. Okay.
One of the classes in the beginning, they had also like in a billiard room, that there was like a woman also like lying, and it was maybe like submitted or somehow like to horrible kind of scenarios. Also with like men in like real classy kind of. With like Irish suits, etc. So it was already from the beginning, and this added with racism like a tactic really grosses like a lot of people out.
Yeah, it's about the men being clad and having the positions of power, and they look very sharp. And well, actually, Suit Supply suits not really that expensive, but you know, they have this kind of expensive, you know, master type image. Okay, so let's move on to the next segment, which is the campaign from New York Pizza. And this is an ad that came out in 2019 July. There were two forms of this ad. One was that it was at bus stops across the Netherlands, so just posted on the street. And there was a TV commercial, 20 seconds long, that appeared on TV. So you're gonna get to see both of these. And let's start with the TV commercial.
Heb jij ook zo'n zin in hete bloemkolen? Bel 0900 0102.
Nieuw bij New York Pizza. De bloemkoolbodem. Upgrade elke pizza voor maar €1.
Zo lekker kan bloemkool zijn.
Okay,
Let's
so
play that
you
again.
saw that. It's in Dutch. For people who don't understand Dutch, I'm going to read out this description in English. So the commercial starts with two female hands sensually touching a cauliflower. And meanwhile, sultry music can be heard. A variation is on the song Shadam. You see a close-up of a woman licking her lips. Then she is shown from her waist to her nose, holding two cauliflowers in front of her breast. Furthermore, she seems to be naked. Again, her mouth appears close up. She bites her lip. The voice over, a sultry female voice, says,
Do you also feel like hot cauliflowers? Call 0900 0102.
Then a pizza appears on the screen. Another voiceover, male, non-sultry, says, new to New York Pizza, the cauliflower bottom. Upgrade every pizza for just €1. As Simone's mouth opens to bite into the pizza, the female voiceover concludes with,
Cauliflower can be so delicious.
okay, so when I first came to Hal with the idea to do the ad, one of the first things he did was to just play the ad without the music. So
Music has such an impact.
yeah. Yeah, what do you think? Because when I saw it without music, I was really focusing on the visuals, and my first thought was that it looks ridiculous.
It reminds me a lot of late night television in my childhood. I think it might be a copy of that kind of ad.
Yeah, that's the joke.
Yeah?
Yeah, that must be it. It's even with the 0 line.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, there used to be 06 numbers because the cell phone didn't exist yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And that's why they are doing now. Yeah, there it is.
Okay, here we go.
Let's get right to the point. I'm the one you want, and I'm willing to talk. Right now, just you and me. Can you handle it?
Yeah, that's it.
Good. There's the number. Now you call me. Go on, pick it up and call. Call 1-900-288. Just $3.99 a call. Live, one-on-one. Adults 18 only. I don't have much time now, but when you call, my time will be all yours.
Yeah, so it was actually quite clear for people of maybe slightly older generation that Clerks, you know, that pizza ad was modeled on these kinds of ads. But the funny thing is that I grew up in Singapore and I never saw anything like this on TV. Never.
But me in Poland, I had it quite popular in the evening when when children supposed to be in a bed. That was like a normal advertisement in the evening.
After 12:30 or 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. Always on.
Yep.
Oh, I can see it more.
Okay, so here, Hal, could you give us a little background into the sound behind this ad?
Well, it was September 1 of Blue, and basically it was in 1969 the first like really sexually explicit song, which was totally, of course, like a world news, because he was like a very older, like 25 years older kind of like rock star and film director, and she was like a young singer and like more kind of like an actress, and they met and they did the production, and they also later like married, but they came together with this song then at September 1 of Blue was the first with sighing and moaning, and that was made like in 1969, the 60s, very much of course like a world hit, because it also took all those commotion about it and made it also again like a hype modern terms. And
yeah, it was even then in quite a few countries. So I'm going to play a clip from the beginning of the ad because that's where the music is actually very similar to the pizza ad. Okay, and so that was the beginning of the song. This is somewhere halfway. bunch of countries.
What was the song?
Originally,
it was a movie?
It was what he made later a movie.
Ah,
about-
and actually he wrote it for Brigitte Bardot, according to the stories. She asked him to write the greatest love song ever, and so he wrote this, and for some reason she turned it down or changed her mind, and after he met Jane Birkin, who had already been a famous star in the show Blow Up, she agreed to do it. Yeah. And so apparently this is something iconic. If you're alive at the time, I don't know if, did people already know this song?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, so for me this was totally new, and it actually gave me more perspective into the influences behind the ad, to know this background, because people of a certain generation who know about this, like as soon as they heard the pizza reclame, they already thought of this very provocative song and all the sexuality that it evoked. And so, it also happens that cauliflower is Dutch slang for breast, and this comes from a very famous song that came out in 1979 from Andre Van Daan. Ik heb hele grote bloembollen. And I'm going to read it.
Idiot.
And what I find so funny is that there's this audience of women who are just like dying of hilarity.
It doesn't look like they would know how to respond on it.
No, it feels awkward to me.
Feel
Yeah.
awkward,
I
yeah.
feel like they're being put there and almost used
Displayed,
for.
That they got lured into the studio at some point.
Yeah.
They got somehow like
Can't
ambushed
sit there
with this.
and crying.
But he had a lot of these songs because he has like a carnival kind of song like Samba Ball, you know, Samba Ball. So it's always like a bit like this kind of coarse, low end kind of, which is for a lot of people still very appealing.
Okay, so let's move on to the reactions that were listed from this ad, because there was a whole range. And so Marietta actually wrote a letter to Het Parool, and it was published. And the headline was, "This photo does women and men a disservice." And so, as you can see, this is the ad that came out at the bus stops. So it's a separate thing from the TV version. And Marietta is going to read us an English translation of the letter that she wrote.
Can I just ask one quick question? So, in Dutch slang, how offensive is cauliflower? Is it like tits, which is sort of more offensive, or is it?
Yeah, it's really an old term. I don't think people use it
We don't use it
anymore.
anymore.
But if you see it, you know what it's meant. But people don't mention it. Like, oh, you have nice cauliflowers. So it's not that offensive because it's already old and it's not being
I think we
used.
use watermelons more
Yeah.
often.
Yeah, we have other well.
Maybe.
Maybe it depends on the size.
Huh?
It depends on the size.
Watermelons?
Yeah.
Watermelon.
Yeah, we use that
Yeah.
sometimes, it's still used.
Juicy watermelons.
No, it's more like, whoa, she has big watermelons.
Yeah.
It was actually a letter I wrote to Maria Pizza.
Oh.
I quite regularly send letters to newspapers and companies when things are for me not true and not love, which is quite often. Dear people from New York Pizza, there's a lot going on in the world which we read about in the news. Rape, sexual abuse and assault, sexual intimidation at work, violence against women, a billionaire who committed suicide, and a prince who both had a special interest in young girls, and the Me Too movement that has really taken off. We live in a time where girls growing up feel uncomfortable about their breasts, especially when they grow, because they get more sexual attention from men. And we have a world leader who sees women as unequal and is being accused of rape. It's a time where we stand for equality for men and women, and we just said yes to a women's quota. It's a time where most women don't feel safe on the streets and who struggle to live their innate qualities and sacredness and therefore harden up to push through life. It's a time where porn has become an acceptable hobby, which has a devastating impact on relationships, intimacy, and how young people view about sex. And we live in a time where sexting is happening more and more, and young boys send dick pics thinking that this is normal. With all that is going on, you felt it was a good and so-called humorous idea to put photos on billboards from a naked woman with 2 cauliflowers in front of her breasts and a "look at how sexy I am" mouth with the slogan, "This is how delicious cauliflower can be." Whether cauliflower tastes great, that is a personal matter, but that is not why I write you this letter. In a time where so much is going on behind closed doors within families and in workplaces, in the relationships between men and women, and with the next generations who are constantly being exposed and getting bombarded with images and advertisements that carry a sexual and imposing energy and are laced with stereotyping and are downgrading towards both men and women, I wonder what your intention was to start this advertising campaign. Of course, I know that in the end it is always about money and that in this particular case you want people to buy your new pizza. I get it. But where's your sense of responsibility? What reflection do you give with this photo, especially towards young girls and boys that pass these billboards? This photo is selling both men and women short, not to mention breasts. Some parents ask me what they should tell their children when they pass by a billboard like this. Great question. What do you say? It made me think of a quote by Einstein: "The world is a dangerous place to live, not because of the people who are evil, but because of the people who don't do anything about it." Let's use the word women and breast unfriendly instead of dangerous. So here's my question. Why don't we say no to campaigns like these and others? And why do we still accept those images on our billboards and in other media? Employees from New York Pizza, where are you? City of Amsterdam, where are you? Everybody that buys pizza at New York Pizza, why do you still buy there? All models from Holland, why do you say yes to such a job? And all Dutch citizens, why do we accept this? If we want things to change, it starts with us, you and me. Now, I'm not urgently looking for a marketing job at the moment, but if you feel the need to have a creative heartstorm about how to sell your new cauliflower pizza, please contact me. Really, it is possible to advertise with a responsibility and energetic integrity and without the use of cauliflower breasts. With love, Marriott.
Thank you for writing this. Yeah, so it was all over the news. There were articles in Volkskrant as well. New cauliflower crust pizza evokes staleness. What did they come up with and who And there was a street in Gouda where they actually taped over the ad, "This is a female-friendly street." This is in Elle magazine. The cauliflower bread from your pizza triggers uproar from feminists. The comically intentioned advertising new pizza shows a naked woman with cauliflowers, but no one finds it funny. Or do they? So this is a funny, like, self-reflective question, right? Because a lot of people take it for granted that this ad is offensive, but clearly there's so much demand for it. Some people don't find it offensive and find it acceptable. So that's a little, it's a little intriguing. This is an interview, so it's a video, and I'm going to play it and then explain what it's about.
Wat vinden jullie van die poster? Ja, ik heb er best wel een beetje problemen mee, omdat ik het toch zo vind bloemkolen in plaats van worsten vind ik een beetje raar. Ik heb zelf ook bij de New York Pizza gewerkt. En eigenlijk vanwege de posters ook wel dacht ik gewoon, ja, dit zijn gewoon onderdelen die eigenlijk een beetje vrouwonvriendelijk zijn voor New York Pizza. En gewoon nodig.
Ik ben er geen fan van. Ik snap dat het hele idee seks zelfs, of dat in ieder geval een idee van reclame is, maar dat daar nog steeds een vrouwenlichaam voor gebruikt wordt. Weet je gebruikt letterlijk het vrouwenlichaam om deze pizza te verkopen. En ja, leuk, een nieuwe bloemkolen voor de titel. Ja.
Ja, maar dat soort aandacht heb je ook niet nodig als pizzabedrijf, vind ik dan zelf.
Jullie hebben dus ontslag genomen vanwege die poster.
Ja, nou, ik vond het vooral iets vriendelijk. Ja, eigenlijk wel. Ja, mijn baas zei eerst van ja, je kan niet zomaar ontslag nemen. En toen zei ik van, ja, maar ik ga niet werken voor zo'n bedrijf. Dat vind ik gewoon onacceptabel eigenlijk. En trouwens, dat moet je doen.
Verstandige jeugd.
I don't know like that. So this teenage, so sweet. This teenage boy, he said, okay, so yeah, having the cauliflower from the breast, I find that a little bit weird, and I think that that's also actually a little bit woman unfriendly. And he actually said in the second half, so that's why me and my colleague, we decided to quit our jobs at New York Pizza. And at first our boss said, no, you can't quit, but these these teenagers, they said, no, I don't want to work for a company that does that. Oh, that's cool. Very cool, right?
And then he said, and by the way, they're really disgusting.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, I mean, New York Pizza is just very good.
So I thought that was just very cool to see that, you know, there are these young men who are sensitive and respectful and recognize what it means. So this is not real, but someone made a kind of spoof. And that's aubergine can be so yummy. And this is a real ad that Bar Local put out, their bar in Amsterdam. So yeah, people actually putting effort into this. This is from a competing pizza company, Maggioni. Yeah. What is beauty without brains? And this is from, I think it's some kind of feminist organization. There's a hashtag women not objects. Yeah, I am pro-fem.nl. Okay, so let's get to the reactions from the company. So the company that actually came up with the campaign was Network. They were hired by New York Pizza. Park Studio did the sound. Post-production was by The Compound. And this is an interview with the marketing director. We could have expounded the benefits of the new bottom, but no one cares about that. That's why we didn't emphasize that it consists of 37% cauliflower, or that the bottom has less calories when New York Pizza. So it has to be fun, it has to stand out. And here it continues. It's being talked about. Many people are trying the pizza crust. We always try to bring our ads to life using humor. We do this several times a year. We're inspired by Andre Van Daan, who once made a funny joke about it. In this way, we hope to draw attention to our crust with a wink.
He speaks in ads, huh? The response is just promoting the pizza.
And so this is, again, continuing. An advertisement with explicit sex would go too far for me. But that's precisely what this is about. Just give us rules about what is and what is not allowed, and we will override them.
Who said this?
I think this one is Rufus Ketting, creative director of Network, the one who came up with the campaign. So now, effects of gender stereotypes on society. The thing is that I didn't know that much about research into this area because I actually have done very little feminism-related activism in the past. This is my first time. So I started diving into the literature, and there's actually quite a lot of information out there. There's all kinds of gender studies programs. There's information on gender stereotypes and the effect that has on society. These are just a few of the reports that I pulled up online and took a look at. And as you can see, they get into specifics, like gender bias in advertising specifically, or combating gender stereotypes and sexism in and through education, or inequality in films. So that's more a Hollywood film focus. And watching gender, how stereotypes in movies and on TV impact kids' development. And so I just found it interesting that there were actually a lot of people out there who have done extensive analyses of different ads. So I'm going to pull up some information here. I'm not going to read through all of it, but just pick out some of the most interesting ones. There are twice as many male characters in advertisements as female characters. Men have 7 times more speaking roles than women. Women are more than twice more likely to be portrayed in a kitchen setting, while men are twice more likely to be portrayed engaging in sports. Dialogue spoken by men was about 30% more likely to contain words associated with power and achievement compared to dialogue spoken by women. Men are almost twice as likely to be portrayed as being funny. When it comes to characters where intelligence is an integral characteristic, like a doctor or a scientist, men are 62 times more likely to be shown as smart. 1 in 3 men are shown with an occupation compared to 1 in 4 women. Okay, so that was advertising. In the news, less than 20% of people in the stories from the news media are women. In the photos accompanying news articles, women are 6 times more likely to be photographed in a private setting than men. And in films. So this is an analysis from the USC Edinburgh School. It was done on the top grossing 1,200 films in the last decade. Only 39% depicted a female lead or co-lead of the people with a disability, and we know that there's very few people with a disability anyways in Hollywood films, but of those people, the vast majority, 72%, were women. Women were on screen were at least 3 times as likely as men to be shown in sexually revealing clothing with partial nudity or referenced as attractive. And women say 66% of them switch off films or TV shows if they feel that they are being negatively stereotyped. So I've definitely had this experience where I actually walked out of a movie before. And yeah, it was with the cast at the time. And
What were you watching?
It was one of these like sci-fi films, and there was a daughter who was a scientist because her father was.
Is it that Mars movie? Something like that.
No, oh maybe.
I think it might, yeah.
It might have been that. And then there was also a token
There was
like
a-
dark-skinned person.
Yeah. And his only role was to mess things up.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that's when I walked out. So it's like this combination
Yeah.
of these things. 85% of women say film and advertising need to catch up with the real world when depicting women. LGBT representation analysis was done on these films. Amongst lead characters, only 2 of 100 top grossing films in 2018 featured an LGBT protagonist. In 2018, only 36% of LGBT characters were female, while 63% were male. Not a single transgender speaking character was depicted on screen across the top 100 movies in 2018. Not a single. across 500 top movies in the last 5 years, there has just been one transgender character, and the depiction was fleeting and humorous in nature. This is not just about women and men, it's about everyone of every sexuality possible, right? So, challenges for parents. 52% of parents feel that the portrayal of the genders in TV shows and movies influences children, the way children view themselves and their genders a great deal. On TV shows and movies specifically targeting children, male characters outnumber female characters by 2 to 1. And this is, entertainment targeted at children. In children's books, only 13% of mothers have a paid job, 6 times less than in reality. Exposure to appearance-focused TV content is correlated with body dissatisfaction among 5 to 8-year-old girls. I mean, this is shocking for me because I didn't know this type of thing when I was 5 to 8, and I'm speculating here, but maybe things have got worse with time, with social media, the internet. I can't imagine being obsessed with my appearance at that age. While male characters are portrayed in domestic roles, they are humorously inept at household chores. And the effects on the next generation. So in one particular study, these 7th graders had to draw a scientist, and they were asked to indicate the biggest source of inspiration for this. 40% of students named TV and films as the chief source of ideas. So when 6-year-old girls are asked to draw a picture of a science, 70% of them draw a woman. When 10-year-old girls are asked the same question, the proportion drops to 25%. And as a scientist, this is very painful to hear. 1st and 2nd graders who view girls playing with traditionally masculine toys because, they have these science girls' toys and boys' toys in shopping centers, in TV commercials, they were more likely to state later that the toys depicted were okay for both sexes than were children who had seen commercials where only boys were playing with these toys. Okay, last one. 60 girls were assigned to view these TV clips featuring either traditional stereotypes of women or women in science, technology, engineering, medicine careers. They had to indicate their confidence in their science and math skills and noted their preference for all of these STEM careers versus non-STEM careers and drew a picture of a scientist. Girls who had viewed the stereotypes were more likely to report interest in stereotypical careers. They were less likely to draw women as scientists, 30% of them, versus 75% of girls who had seen portrayals of women in STEM jobs. So I'd like to stop talking over here and I don't have kids, but I think when I looked at that picture of myself in the beginning, I tried to imagine what my parents must have thought when they took that photo, of a young girl, very impressionable, very precious, and, what were they thinking? Probably they wanted to nurture me, give me every, opportunity and protect me from the big, ugly world. And I'm sure, like any one of you, if I took a picture from the time you're 5 years old and put on a screen, we'll be like, oh, that's so cute. And that's from the time we are these little, impressionable, innocent children to the time we are adults. We've had so many influences that shape our perspective, cultural, familial, societal, that take us from that almost genetically pre-programmed but not yet shaped by cultural influences material, all the way to people with a particular perspective of the world. So I'm just wondering if we could hear from anyone who has kids, like what your take on this is. And most of you are Tim.
Well, I have 2 daughters, and it's true that it's true what you say, but you as a male, it doesn't bother me usually as much before, like this, especially more the things that are sexist things more towards women usually than men, and men tend to be sometimes more sexistic thinking than women, sometimes maybe. But as soon as I got 2 daughters, or first one and then the second one, things change around, and you become aware of these things around you that are influencing their perspective and the things that you see on the street. Women, big nice butts, women, female butt or tits, but also like Halloween posters with scary faces and monsters. It's also like, I don't want my 4-year-old daughter to, it scares her, you know what I mean? So you get more aware of these images around you, more than I had before I had children. But so it's true. It does bother me, and I've noticed the Bloemkool commercial as well, of course, in that context. Like, what do I tell my daughter when she looks at it, or and you see things as well when your daughter, or my daughter is dancing, for instance, she would, I'm a kontje, or she will push her ass a bit, like, I'm like, what are you doing? But I don't know, so you don't know where she got it from, or if that's maybe, is it normal for women, for small girls to wave your ass around and your titties like that, or I don't know, is it normal for young girls to dance like that, or do you see it somewhere? So also in video clips and musical things, of course, there's a lot of sexism going on. But it has bothered me lately more and more about these billboards on the street. Like I choose not to watch television for 12 years already, but I watch a lot of internet-related film and YouTube things, which also have commercials, of course. But I can turn it off, but the billboard you can't turn off unless you put a poster in front of it. You know what I mean? So it's I'm happy with your drive to. And then you as well, for people who stand up to these things. And,
Well, thanks for being part of our team, and thanks again, Marietta, for being here. When I first reached out to Tim, we described the concept, we talked about it together with Hal, and one of the things that Tim immediately brought up was his daughters and how much more aware he is. And I was just so impressed with that, and really thankful that there's guys like you everywhere, really, who recognize this and also, just appreciate what women go through. Anyone have other thoughts?
Just wanted to say I have two daughters as well.
Yeah.
When I go to the library, which is supposed to be a place of education, it really impresses me because I can't see them in any books. It's just so limiting, and then all the protagonists are boys, and I just can't believe it. These are highly educated people buying in these books, making this very limited choice of whether to market. But it's just one area that used to be so far behind them. They're just not represented, and they're just not doing anything with the female characters. So it's very much not aware. It's very binary still.
I was recently at a talk at Backhaus des Rijken about gender stereotypes in school books. So this is not really children's books, but it's books like reading or math and stuff that kids use in school. And these researchers had actually worked together with a bunch of publishers of these books to do an extensive analysis on literally, I think, thousands of books, and analyzed the characters based on their names, their apparent gender, and also their ethnicity. And so they basically noticed, for example, that every time there was someone called Ahmed, he always worked in, how do you say it? A shawarma window. You know, like a kebab window. And of course, you know, the question is, yes, Ahmed can work in the shawarma window, but he can also do something else if he wants. And it was very interesting that evening, because there were a few people from the publishing industry there, and obviously the publishers who had taken part in that research, they were very interested in trying to improve. And something that kept coming up was that these are unconscious biases that they built into the books. So one of the ladies who was there, she works for a publishing house, and she said she made sure that her own name, which I think was something like Nina, would appear in the books. You know, and it takes someone with an outsider perspective in the right place to really transform the system. Because otherwise people just don't even realize that they're doing it.
But have you ever talked with a book writer, like an author?
No.
That would be great. I would email and say, hey, I cannot find a book or a publisher. Why isn't there any book out there that actually represents who we are, you know? Because I would, if I would be a children's book writer, I'm not. I would definitely go for that. It's a great suggestion. Yeah.
To exaggerate also the mass culture, if you look at the total, the summit of like Western culture, like superheroes, and like superheroines, like the American superheroines, there are maybe like only the last 2 or 3 or 5 years that like Wonder Woman or like maybe like Captain Marvel, you know, but all for the whole world, it's like Captain Marvel, if you did like nerdy coming down, but she's like maybe the strongest heroine, even stronger than all the Thors or like Iron Man, but the only thing that matters to a lot of people is that she doesn't smile enough while she's saving the world, you know. So this is also this is the summit of the highest culture of the Western civilization, and then like the strongest human person is a woman, Captain Marvel, but no, she's not a real heroine because she doesn't smile enough, you know.
Yeah,
It's also very much like that.
Yeah, about this movie, it was a lot of discussion, like, oh, she's represented so badly because the actress is so rude and she's kind of not really nice, not like the Wonder Woman actress. And yeah, this kind of stuff, which is so stupid.
Oh, you mean like the choice of actress?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Who was it?
There was a very negative publicity with Brie Larson. She's a staunch feminist, and she also actually didn't award an actor who was accused of sexual harassment on Oscars. So, and she's kind of having a rough patch with media all over, and it's kind of, she always gets negative publicity because she doesn't there to like when she gives talk shows, she doesn't smile or like doesn't have that womanly image of I'm a beautiful actress and I can do. So it's like a hate relationship with the media right now, and probably that's what is actually causing this kind of effect on. So it's not just that she is not being like, there's a negative campaign against her because she also stood up to a lot of producers in the film industry, and that's behind all of this because I read an article about this once.
But it was the specific episode in the film, like some joke on the motorbike said her Captain Marvel said like, oh, smile or something like that, and she stole his motorcycle.
Oh, I love her.
Yeah,
So great.
It's like the perfect feminist point, but so many men was kind of offense by that. Like, oh, he just told her to smile. It's a perfectly normal thing to tell to women. Yeah, that was like the huge topic about this episode.
She was very good though before. I mean, she was a media darling when she won the Oscar, and then it turned around completely because That's how people work. I mean, it done during the Me Too era because she took a couple of producers who she shouldn't have. And that's basically what Weinstein did all over with many other women.
Yeah.
It was probably not Weinstein, I'm not sure which producer. She stood up to some people and then that wasn't good enough for her.
And I think that's one of these forces that sometimes stops us from speaking out or taking action because we feel so vulnerable that we're the only one. And it's true, if you listen to all the actresses who came out with Me Too, they often said that if I said something, some of them did actually say something, and their career was literally just trashed.
Yeah.
So they couldn't get jobs anymore, they couldn't succeed, they just wouldn't even get called to interview. So yeah, I definitely think that is this horrible underlying history of these power structures that continue to perpetuate these biases. At the same time, I do have hope because recently I've been seeing more top Hollywood films, like the one from that Swedish writer, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. And I watched one of these sequels on the plane recently, and I was struck by the fact that she always just looked totally serious and did not smile the entire movie. And you just never see that, and I was so thankful for this. And I just thought, okay, she looks like a normal human being who's not being forced to always act nice, you know, for anyone who might be watching. And the fact that this movie was made and it's a big blockbuster, that already gave me some hope that there is clearly, firstly, a demand for this type of non-stereotypical depiction, and secondly, that the movie producers are actually waking up to this.
Yeah, it's lovely that you say the demand, because as long as there's a demand, there will be supply.
Yeah.
That's just how it works with everything.
But sometimes, if there's a supply, we get manipulated into creating the demand.
But there still needs to get something triggered inside of ourselves. We can still say no to it. If nobody buys New York pizzas, they're out of business.
Yeah.
It's very easy.
Okay, so in the interest of time, let's move quickly to legal and financial implications following the uproar over this advertisement. So there is something in the Netherlands called the Stichting Reclamecode, and they are kind of watchdog organization that deals with complaints from the public about ads. So they received a large number of complaints about the New York Pizza ads. They scheduled a dedicated hearing for it in August, and they issued 2 rulings, 2 separate ones for the billboard, so that's the postage, versus the TV commercial. And then in September, they issued their final ruling. So let's see what they had to say. This is about the billboard. They say, the commission is of the opinion that the billboard is in conflict with good taste and decency as referred to in Article 2 NRC. So they actually decided that the billboard was not acceptable. So look at the TV ad. In reference to the telephone number, the background music, the sultry voice, and the text hot cauliflowers are together so exaggerated and thick that the whole comes across as a parody of ads for telephone sex lines, for which ads are permitted. The average consumer will understand that this is a parody, the more so now that it quickly becomes clear that it concerns the promotion of a pizza crust. Although the Commission understands that not everyone appreciates the intended humor in the expression, it doesn't consider the ad as having crossed the limits of what is permissible. So to paraphrase, they said that the poster version was offensive, but the TV ad was actually acceptable. So,
But
you
isn't
know,
that because the poster has no context,
Yeah.
whereas the TV ad provides a context?
yeah,
That's the reasoning.
this is the reason given. So what do
But
you,
that,
what
like,
do you,
Poster ad is
I don't necessarily agree with the outcome, but I can understand the argument. I mean, an image, you feel a lot from yourself, particularly if there's no additional information. But if they're basically making a play on an old sex ad, then it comes across. So So then there is a target. So it's you. No, so I didn't necessarily agree with the outcome, but I understand the rationale.
Yeah. Go on. You were saying something.
Well, the post-red is a still, so you see a still image, and you keep seeing the same image. And in the video, it's a movement, and that's why I think that the Commission understands that the TV ad is permissible. That's more a technical thing, I think, than how I see it.
Ryan?
Yeah, what I think is that this just shows that sexism is an institutional problem. I think because within these laws and this whole rules of this society, you can just do these things, and so it's an accepted thing to do. But if we look in the history, then we can see that laws doesn't always aren't compliant with your morals or something, like
Absolutely not.
100 years ago slavery was legal, so
Yeah.
Laws.
Yeah, I think laws are always catching up with what the general public thinks. I mean, until very recently, homosexuality was illegal almost everywhere, And it's just crazy, right? Like to see how behind the laws are sometimes. In Singapore, actually, because it's a British colony, it inherited these anti-homosexual laws from the British. And there was a lot of uproar recently where people were trying to get this law changed where it's actually illegal to be gay. And even after a lot of discussion and reasoning and arguments, the country decided not to repeal the law. And one of the reasons given by the government was that, Singapore is essentially a conservative society. Really?
So I'm actually glad that you brought up homosexuality because I think there's kind of two separate questions here. One is that whether this ad is appropriate, and I think we're all in agreement that it's not. And the other question is should it be legal? And I like that you brought up homosexuality because whether if you're relying on government institutions like this to enforce laws, then enforce social norms, then what is enforced depends on who's in power. So I think there's a danger in resorting to these methods to regulate speech. And I think I prefer boycotts. I think would be, or in these types of cases, I think a method that I would prefer and would be more comfortable with.
So I actually came across a blog that called for boycotting of New York Pizza. The blog is called Datin Kuat. And the thing is, I think there already needs to be an existing network of people who can mobilize at the moment that these ads come out and who will say, let's actually start a real boycott. Because if people are individually boycotting these ads, I'll come to that in a minute, but and we're not actually mobilized together, I think that the impact, firstly, you don't know how much impact that is, and secondly, you don't even see it. Or at least we don't look through the bank rolls, so we don't know. Like, I have been boycotting New York Pizza, because I used to buy pizzas from them. But I think you need to kind of at least have some awareness in the public that this is a movement. Okay, so, very quickly, I'm just going to explain some information that I got from an email from a legal firm. They actually fought a court case against, I believe, Suit Supply about the sexism in one of their ads. So this is a firm that has a history of taking up cases that affect women, and particularly not just an individual woman, but women's rights in general. And they explained to me, because I asked them, if the RCC, the Reklame Code, says, okay, the billboard ad is not acceptable, I wanted to know what the implications of that ruling were. Would the company get slapped with a fine? Would they be forced to sign some document where they could never produce a sexist ad? And so the RCC has no legal authority to impose financial sanctions. However, there's this other body called the Advertising Code Authority. And they have a compliance department that checks to see if the advertiser complied with the decision from the RCC. That would be not to create ads of this sort from the post, like the type you'll see in the poster. And so this is a little bit of technicalities. But apparently these media institutions that are responsible for actually putting ads out, and they're affiliated with some kind of advertising code foundation under a media act. And so if an ad is found to be in violation of the Dutch advertising code, it will no longer be broadcast or distributed to these media institutes. And if the advertisers do not adhere to the ruling, they'll be put on a non-compliance list. And then they'll come to the attention of regulators, such as the Netherlands Authority for Consumers and Markets. And this body is authorized to impose fines if they see reason to do so. And according to the RCC, there's a high compliance rate. 97% of advertisers adhere to the statements. So what I get from this is, since the RCC had a negative ruling on the poster, the company would not be allowed to continue with ads like poster, but they would be allowed to continue with TV ads. Ads like the TV one, right? Yeah, so I think let's get straight to my story very quickly because it's getting late. So I used to buy pizzas from New York Pizza for my meetings at work, and I have literally spent a couple €100 within the last 1 or 2 years on New York Pizza. Well, guess what? I got sushi the last time. I also wrote to New York Pizza. They said, we regret to learn of the manner with which you have received our ad. It's created in a striking manner using nudge, nudge, wink, wink humor in order to bring unnamed products to your attention. And then at the bottom of the email, they actually offered me a coupon code to try the Bloemkool Bolden pizza. Did you order it?
Huh?
Did you order the pizza?
What do you think?
I don't know.
No.
You didn't?
I replied with a very long email again.
I replied.
I never heard of them since, but
yeah, I replied with an angry, short email.
no, I didn't order these. I don't eat pizza.
And then I thought, okay, what should I do? I've already boycotted the company. I've written letters, not just to New York Pizza, but to other places. And I decided to create a feminist version. So now we're finally going to, now we're going to do the screening. And I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to let you watch it.
Bring it on.
And, okay, lights are off, sound is on.
Sound is on, yeah.
Okay, this is the first ever live public screening. Of Bloemkool Pizza, the feminist answer to New York Pizza's cauliflower.
Come and grab my cauliflower. Viens prendre mon chou-fleur. 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 Come and grab my cauliflower. Mon chou-fleur. Viens prendre mon chou-fleur.
Wie wil het nog een keer zien?
Where did you find your actors?
Yeah.
I'm curious.
Yeah, so let's go straight to the panel discussion. Could we get all the team members, Tim and Goan, also to the front, and Maria to the Yeah, that'll be good.
Yeah.
Okay, so I got this idea, and then one of the first things I did was to create a storyboard, and I had my little watercolor paintings of what I wanted to create, and I can tell you that from the beginning I had a pretty good idea of what I wanted. So I'm only showing the first 4 scenes, like some of the tamest ones. And then I basically contacted Hao, and I know him through Aga, and Hao was incredibly enthusiastic, which made me think that my idea was not a completely bad one. And yeah, so Hao, could you say a little about your thoughts when I first contacted you?
Well, I thought it was really like that's a genius, because it was basically the total opposite of always like the total stereotyping of like women, and then to basically abuse men in that way. I like it very much. So also to make it very clear that women have the equal power and also right to do what like basically centuries have been done also by men to like women. So I thought in the sense of equality, it appealed very much to me, like the equality and the beautiful justice of it all. The poetic justice, even the official poetic justice.
Yeah, and then after that, did we contact Tim first or go on?
First go on, exactly, so we put it up.
Yeah, and I showed you the storyboard. We came over to your studio and I showed you these crazy drawings, and what did you think?
Well, what I thought about it was that something like this has to be become visual and get this impact cross over to, like they did with the New York Pizza commercial. And they have this answer in a feminist way. That's what I thought. And I said, well, I got the capabilities, I can have these effects also in it. We improvised and we created things, and to get this, this whole project of yours come to life. During the process, it was really a crazy way to work with each other also. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, I'll show some pictures in a moment in the studio, at Golan Studio.
And the music is also a big part of the whole clip.
Ja, dat was inspiratie was natuurlijk zien. Oh, sorry, in English. Sorry, but well, a couple of moments of inspiration came together. One was, of course, the drive from Zine, when she told me the story, and the other one was musically to make some dirty, gimmicky dance tune. And of course, they're a bit opposite feelings, of course, they have, but like sexism and dance floor music, they're also very related. And not all in a negative way, but I'm also a bit, I have two sides in this, because I like some wrong music as well, some bit foute muziek. Can be funny. Well, there are examples. There is, of course, Benny Benassi Satisfaction is one of them. Very sexist. A woman with a drill board. I don't know. You don't want to know. There is you have a pit bull with it's called Fireball. I'm a fireball. That's, well, also a gimmicky kind of tune. Chemical Brothers, Do It Again. It's more classy, but it has also the gimmicky elements. But also some old school speed garagey kind of drops and breakdowns I had inspiration from. But where to start? I started with, and it had to be sexistic. So where do you start? Well, I started with a simple Dutch line. It was pak mijn bloemkool, grab my cauliflower. It was like, okay, grab these cauliflowers, but one cauliflower is right here. So grab my cauliflower and try different languages. Prendre mon chou-fleur. I mean, in French everything sounds very nice, but prendre mon chou-fleur, it didn't really groove that well. And then I came with the word kom en pak mijn bloemkool. Kom en pak mijn bloemkool. Come and grab my cauliflower. Come and grab my cauliflower. So then it started rolling, and in French is viens prendre mon chou-fleur. Viens prendre mon chou-fleur. So that was where it actually started with this line, and viens prendre mon chou-fleur, viens prendre na 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 na. So then suddenly there the melody rolled out, and then the process. Then I have started as a sound creator with a basic outline from where I had a lyric, I had a melody line. And then the chaos starts. That's how you work in a studio usually, or how I work. Create chaos, generate material, use synthesizers, effects, experiment, and do that for a couple of days. And then go into the hard and funny part, editing, arranging, mixing materials. But that's where, that's how it started, this project, with viens prendre mon chou-fleur, come and grab my cauliflower. Yeah. So, as sexist as I could thought of at that moment.
Yeah, I really regret that I didn't put a picture of your studio in the slides, because the first time when Howard and I came over to your studio at iWork, we just first came into the normal lounge area, and then you took us on a tour. And you brought us to a room that was like a cross between a sauna and the headquarters of a spaceship, because it was probably, I don't know, like half the size of this room, and there was all kinds of digital mixing, electronic synthesizer equipment everywhere, and I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, it's a bit of a nerdy thing, I think. Most of the work comes sitting behind a little computer screen, but sometimes I can also use a bit of the hobby side of things, sound designing, beat designing, composing, and that's with a lot of stomp boxes. I got multiple mixers attached to one another. Well, I invite you to come and look in the studio. It's kind of a bit of a spaceship. Yes, it is. It's all yeah. It's an instrument actually, basically. It's more of an instrument where a sound goes in and I duplicate it and send it to different routes, different effects, which all come back onto a mixing desk. And then you can from nothing, of almost nothing, create an orchestra. Yeah? Not this, but you can.
Okay, so remember I got a coupon for that free pizza? Well, I thought it was perfect to use it to do market research. And so I ordered a pizza. Just before it was supposed to arrive, the company said, oh, actually, your coupon code doesn't work. And so I got in touch back with the company and asked them, to fix this. And one of the technical people who was managing our conversation was very nice. He said he actually forwarded our email to people in charge of the back-end software. And he said, ja, nog een keer iemand blij maken met iets die niet werkt. Which means, you know, you make someone happy with something that doesn't work, because clearly this was a recurring problem. Lots of people had these fake coupon codes. But anyway, they resolved it. I got my free pizza, took a lot of pictures of it, and then I ate it. I'm not going to tell you how it tasted right now, but I did eat the pizza. So my days were filled with pizza. It's a bit our chef can't make it tonight. Rishad, he was our kitchen department. We brainstormed. We put a lot of ideas together as to how we would carry out this like technically demanding shoot. And he was really like the genius behind it all. This is Rishad. And we were making all these pizzas. I haven't eaten pizza since. You can see there's a tube of glue there. There's also some really strong, what do you call it? Like this super glue. I was super gluing these pizzas to pieces of card so that we'll be able to fold them up at the end. And the smell of the glue and the pizza was just awful. Yeah, we made so many different types of pizzas because we realized that during the shoot we would actually need raw versions, baked versions, you know, and we needed to have backups of all of these pizzas. So we ended up having maybe 5 to 6 different types of pizza and in duplicate options.
Stuffed pizza.
I can use.
Yeah, the basil leaves.
Fresh.
So our fridge was full of blumenkohl and pizzas.
Yeah, basically it was like a very technical kind of shoot because it's all kind of food photography, which was one of the most demanding kind of photography or video in that way because it's very technical. It has to really like with smoke, with everything. So this was the trick to one of Gold's tricks, the lack of tricks, to make it like a pan, like a hot pan. You do a little oil, heat a little oil, and then you turn it over, and then you take it quickly away, and then it comes up like beautiful with smoke as if it's just coming out of it. So those kind of things. Because I want to say that with Sing, there was like genius, but also in the sense that he worked very hard, and also during the night, and also during the day job, but also like 4 to 5 script forms, and also like own kind of storyboard. So it's a lot of things that basically in 1 minute and 46 seconds, but there are like maybe hundreds, maybe 1,000 hours in total, man hours in total made of just what it made be this result, from making this result.
That's why I wanted to stick to the storyboard.
Yeah.
And to what she has in her vision, make it come real.
Yeah, and I was so surprised sometimes that you took the storyboard so seriously that if the angle is a bit different, I said, okay, maybe that's this. And then you said, but in the storyboard it looks like this.
Yes.
And I was like,
They were
yeah.
perfectly drawn, the details were there.
Yeah.
If it slightly changes, or I will say, I want a totally different way, then no, it wouldn't have worked. Wouldn't have come as a result as it has. No.
And the challenging thing, of course, because it's all round, the pizza is round, so it has to be in balance, and the person has to drip. So how do you film it from above? So it was really very technical. It took like 3 days of shooting just for making this 1 minute and 46 seconds. So like that, you know, like like with 6 or 7 people in total. So it's like massive for just 1 minute and 46 seconds of bit of magic in that way.
Seeing a union woman in the production team.
Yeah.
Interesting for feminists.
Yeah.
So I like that.
I think you know, I've thought a little bit about what I want to do next, and it would be amazing if I had resources and could contact people, you know, and more women would be interested. We did have assistants, 2 assistants, and they were female, and our makeup artist was also female.
just this was like the scene that I called it myself, this picture, Giddy Up Boys, like in this scene like there, and it all happened in that scene, but of course for the anonymity of our actors, but it was like this, how it was, you took it like the screen, the big screen, that you really looked at what the recording was, and then singers are directed in between and like that.
Yeah, and someone asked where I got my actors from. They were nude models. And I specifically look for nude models because, firstly, my parents are artists, and I always grew up with these amazing sketches and paintings of nude models in my house. So for me, this was something very beautiful and very natural. I am also an artist, and I love drawing, so I've also drawn nudes. And for me, this is something that's just like the human body, the natural human body. And I just admire people who are very comfortable with who they are, and also very professional, like, you know, we just sit in a room and artists get to study human anatomy. So for me, nude models are amazing. And I wanted to get actors whom I knew would have this body confidence where, you know, they firstly would not be afraid to be naked in front of a team and other actors. And amazingly, I got a lot of responses, and a lot of people were very interested to do it. It was still a little bit tricky to get them all, you know, at the same time, the same place on the shoot days, but we managed. And there were some other people who couldn't make it on those 2 days, but they were extremely supportive because someone said, yeah, I'm a father, or yes, I understand why you're doing this. And amazingly, they ranged in age. The oldest one was 63 years old. So this was something very beautiful to see. It was one of my favorite parts of creating the short film, that I had support from so many people from different ages. And back to Deborah's point, you know, it wasn't a predominantly woman production. I think there were more men involved. But it was also very uplifting to see that men wanted to be involved. And I think you do need both genders or all genders together. Sometimes I go for events and it's almost all women in the room, and I think that's a shame. So I'm very grateful for the team that I have, regardless of your gender.
Well, I want to say that basically it's about not only femininity but also about singing. That it's totally, all about result, but it's totally exceptional also, unfortunately, that too little of these productions are made, but it is very much possible. And in this way I want to make like a manifesto in the sense that men can also be in that way for equality, or also conscious of how things should be in the world to make it a better world, a more equal world, also for our children, for our future. But that is also possible with all of us together. That is the thing what Sing is also trying to do, in the sense of she really thought it out and she really produced it. And indeed, men had to audition.
Had to work.
Yeah.
And I hate everybody. Okay. Yeah, but I also feel like, you know, I put this together with my team, and I'm just one person. So I hope to inspire people to take action. Sometimes, I have to say, I spend a lot of money on this, on my personal savings, and I spend way too much. And if I know how much it would cost, I would never start it. But, you know, I think that with the right connections, the right resources that you have to build up with time, it is possible to make an impact just as an individual. So I just want to, you know, that's why I wanted to put myself out there and create this and show people that, yes, you can make something and change the world. Which is why I'm wearing my Superwoman outfit. So I was actually doubting as to whether to include this picture. Do you know what it is? Glue? Conditioner. Yeah, like really Andre Long conditioner. I bought a lot of it. Yeah.
So what was the brand? I like that. What was the brand?
Andre Long. It's this purple one that you have.
For curly hair. For curly hair? For curly hair.
Yeah, that was the cheapest one. Oh yeah. Yeah. So
How many pizzas did you waste with the André? Trying to time it out.
actually, maybe 3 or so.
3 or
Not
so.
too bad, yeah. Yeah. And I think in one of the other pictures you can see like these bottles on the ground. It's
Yeah.
these bottles, and that's what we use to squeeze the conditioner.
Actually, I had 3. We worked in one.
Yeah.
We fixed that up.
Yeah, because the thing is, these bottles that we bought, they came in packs of 3, and we were being a little cheapskate, and instead of buying another set of 3, we had this other bottle that was supposed to be for mayo, and it did not work well. It didn't look right. And so we had to take a plastic bag and cut off a corner and do it like making cakes. So, yeah, that was our improvise.
You guys didn't see it.
Yeah, I love this picture. It's just one of those shoot days. Okay, so we're already over time. If you have to leave, please feel free. Very quickly, I just want to go over the types of resources that exist to combat gender stereotypes, because there are plenty of them. There's a report that I found, which is basically a series of guidelines on how to combat sexism in the media. And these are very nice, that's why I put them here. So these are standards to eradicate gender stereotypes. So for example, by promoting positive images, encouraging the media to pursue policies that promote equality, promoting female leadership, strengthening self-regulatory mechanisms and codes of conduct to condemn and combat sexist imagery, proactively addressing the effects of stereotyping by educating people. So I think starting with a set of principles that you want to adhere to is always a very good beginning. So some of the good practices recommended include having targeted media campaigns, legislation, awards for companies that actually portray women in non-stereotypical ways, having databases of women experts. So if I want to make my next film and I want that to be gender balanced, I can look up women in various technical positions, and training courses to raise awareness of the gendered nature of information and the media. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but these are examples of organizations that tackle these issues. If anyone wants a list of these, let me know and I'll send you a PDF. And so one example is Women Inc. They have a knowledge database, and they list different types of resources that you can approach if you want to have more equality in your organization, if you want to hire experts or consultants. They have a campaign called Bebert Zicht, which basically has a survey to test how gender biased you are. This is kind of cool. There's Atria. This is a knowledge institute in Amsterdam, in the center. And they have a lot of work on stereotyping and that sort of thing. And some of their themes, for example, are diversity in media and representations in sexuality. Nederlandse Vrouwenraad, they are actually an umbrella organization for other organizations, and they work at the political and governmental levels, and they do a lot of lobbying to try and enact structural change in government. So they have, for example, the work in the Toekomst Alliance, and that is about breaking through gender stereotypes in education and in the labor market. Emancipator, this one stands out because it is really focused on involving men in their work. They have a lot of programs about sexual and partner violence, and they have, for example, workshops with teenage boys to help them to think through certain issues, gender norms, or even help them to be more open and expressive with each other, like more feminine traits. And these are some of the projects that they work on. Movici, again, this is a firm that works a lot on social issues, including women's emancipation. And this last one is a campaign that came out, and it's actually, I think it's really directed at young people between the ages of 17 and 23 or so, and it's to get them to think about the stereotypes that they have kind of absorbed over the years, and more importantly to encourage them to talk to their peers, so other teenagers, and examine like what they think is the norm, and discuss, you know, what the norm should actually be, like how to interact with respect. So I like that they focus on getting the young people to open up and discuss this amongst themselves. Okay, so so I would implore you to share the campaign. I would love it to go viral. I think it has the qualities that would let it go viral. And my mission right now, it's still kind of vague, but I would like to firstly ignite discussions and not just ignore this particular campaign. Also connect people, like tonight, people who really care about these issues. Also shine a spotlight on the resources that I just mentioned, because they are out there, and companies, especially big, powerful companies, need to realize that they should take responsibility and make use of these consultants. There's no reason not to. I mean, they can afford to. And in the future, I think it would be great if we could establish a network of people who would be able to mobilize quickly and come up with ideas and maybe do something if we see a campaign in the future that's very similar. One of the main reasons why I did this was I don't want to see the same thing from New York Pizza ever again. Okay, so how you can help, please share on social media. I have not yet created a crowdfunding campaign, but I want to do that in the coming days. We recorded tonight's event, so let me know if you don't want to be in the picture, but I'm going to post it online because I think it's important to have the context to why I created this video. And if you donate to the crowdfunding campaign, you will get access to my storyboard set to some of the early version of the music, which is very cool. Please reach out if you want to connect and brainstorm, volunteer for something. And if you have contacts with organizations, media, activists who would be interested, please put me in touch. And there's also a sheet over here where you can put your email address, leave your contact info, and please stay in touch. So thank you so much for being here.